Can you see the slide?
Yes,
Uh,
ma'am.
yeah. So should I start? I think most of them have joined.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So today we'll discuss the most important, the practical thing we use to do every day in our life, and this is very important to know from a clinical point of view. That is Pap smear. Why this is very important? Because we all know that cervical cancer is one of the most deadest disease by which the woman is suffering in India, and 200 women die each day due to this cancer. This is sad, but yes, it is true. So India, the disease burden is 1,32,000 deaths in India every 10 years, and in world it is 4,93,000. That is so huge, and still this simple test, if we can do and screen all the patients, we can catch them very early and do the treatment, because if we do this treatment in the early stage, the cure is much high. So we need to know the pap smear. Before I am going to the pap smear, we should know what is the area of the cervix. We take the scrapings. So we can see here in the diagram, this is a uterus, and this is a lower part of the uterus which is known as cervix. So cervix has got two parts. The part which is inside, that is known as endocervix, and the part which is outside, that is known as ectocervix. And a line joining this endocervix and this ectocervix, this is known as transformation zone. That this is an imaginary line. Okay. So why it is important to know the transformation zone? Because this is the only area where all the pre-malignant cells can be there, and if it is persistent and it is progressing, it will lead to invasive cancer. So here there is a difference. The lining of the endocervix, it is different from the lining of the ectocervix. The ectocervix is lined by the stratified squamous epithelium, and the endocervix, it is lined by the columnar epithelium. It is single line layer cells. So this epithelium looks different when you examine under colposcopy. So the columnar epithelium, which is a part of the endocervix, that is pinkish in color, bright pinkish in color, and the squamous epithelium, it is light pink to pale in color. So we can distinguish by this color. Okay, but yes, this transformation zone, which is the junction of this squamous epithelium and the columnar epithelium, it changes depending upon the puberty, the childhood, reproductive period, perimenopause, and the postmenopause. And this line, the original squamous epithelium, if it is inside and in reproductive age group, you know that due to the action of the hormones and the growth of the uterus, there is a hypertrophy of the cervix. So this endocervix protrudes outside. So what is happening? The part of the endocervix, sorry. So what the part of the endocervix which is protruding outside, what is happening that it is exposed to the vaginal fluid, okay, the lactobacilli, all the pre-invasive risk factors which leads to CA cervix. So normally if the patient has a good immune response, and there are no risk factors to these patients, so this endocervix which is exposed outside during the reproductive phase, there will be this columnar epithelium. You know that this endocervix which is exposed outside, it is lined by the columnar epithelium. This columnar epithelium, because of the high pH, will change to immature squamous epithelium. Okay, so this is known as, we all know what is this type of transverse. It is known as metaplasia. Okay, so this is known as immature squamous metaplasia, and if it is normal, so in few again days, this immature squamous metaplasia will lead to mature squamous metaplasia, and it becomes a normal squamous epithelium. So you know that original is this, and now the recent is this, the new formation. So this whole area is the junction. Okay, this is a this is a zone formation. So the area between the old and the new columnar junction, it is known as transformation zone, and you need to understand this, how it forms and what is the area of the transformation zone depending upon the age group. As we can well uh, appreciate that during the growth, during the reproductive period, there is a whole of the transformation zone which is can easily be appreciated when you do the examination of the cervix. But again, when the perimenopause and the postmenopausal stage, this again the cervix becomes indrawn up. Okay, so this ectocervix and this is endocervix, which is outside, it goes inside. So this transformation zone, it is slightly inside. You cannot see the transformation zone completely now. Okay, so then you cannot take the smear 100% because half of the transformation zone is visible outside and half of this is inside. So we have to take different tests to diagnose and screen the cancer cervix. I hope this is the basic thing you have understood it. We all know that the cancer is the uncontrolled growth of the abnormal cells in any part of the body, and because there may be radiation exposure, there may be chemicals which is toxic causing mutagenesis or the microorganism, and the most common organism virus, we all know that human papilloma virus, the low risk and the high risk will lead to cancer. So coming to the natural history, as we all know that if there is a risk, if there is a infection either with the human papilloma virus infection or by continuous high risk factors. So the main causative agent is human papilloma virus type 16 and type 18. So which causes cervical lesions. Okay, it may be normal, and if the immunity is good, this normal epithelium is well maintained. But if the immunity is not good and it is persistent HBV infection, then this change of the transformation zone, the lining of the squamous epithelium, which is changing, and this will lead to precancerous lesion, that is cervical interepithelial neoplasia 1, neoplasia 2 and 3. You know that why it is called 1, if it is involving just one third of, of the epithelium, not involving the base membrane. CIN2 is up to two-third and CIN3 is up to whole. Okay, but they are not involving the basement membrane. And if it is basement membrane is involved and there is a stromal invasion, then that is invasive cancer. So all we know that the risk factors, what are the multiple risk factors if the patient is using long hormonal contraceptives. Hormonal contraceptives, why it is causing this? Because if those patients who are using contraceptives, it has been studied and seen that they are more prone for sexual activity. Okay, so this sexual activity causes continuous trauma to the transformation zone. So this is a basic pathophysiology behind the use of long term use of hormonal contraceptives. Early initiation of sexual activity, high parity, 4 times risk, use of tobacco smoking, chronic sexually transmitted infection, chlamydia trachomatis, one of the most common, and herpes simplex virus 2 infection. HIV infection, we all know, causes immunosuppression, multiple sex partners, and lower socioeconomic status. So these all are the risk factors which causes progression of the cervical cancer, okay, and causes persistent HPV infection. So whenever a patient is coming, you have to ask all these things. All the history is very much important because they will help you to do the proper investigations and management much nicely. So this picture you can see, this is a human papilloma virus. We can highly see this diagram now, appreciate, and then this infection of the cervix, the transformation zone, there may be mild cytologic abnormalities like CIN, most of the cytologic abnormalities CIN1, but if the patient has a good immunity, no risk factors, then it will be cleared off. Okay, they have the tendency to clear this HIV infection. Okay, this causes regression to the normal epithelium. But if there is a progression, then it leads to precancerous lesion, and if it is invasion, then it leads to cancer of the cervix. So again, this picture see the same case. There may be progression or there may be regression. It depends upon the most of the risk factors and the patient immunity. So what are the symptoms the patient presents with? It is very important to know the symptoms of the patient because they may present with wide variety of symptoms and you may confuse that yes, it cannot be a cervical cancer. So every patient's any complaint you have to think and do the pap smear because this is a screening test even if the patient doesn't have any symptom and they may get the findings of cervical intraepithelial neoplasia 1 or 2 when you do the pap smear. So this is very much important. But yes, in those patients who are presenting with continuous vaginal discharge, it may be persistent or foul smelling discharge. And if the discharge is recurring in spite of the treatment, it is very much important to take the pap smear. Repeated infection, STD infection, and urinary tract infection. Yes, most of the patient presents with vaginitis and UTI infection. So when you treat, the patient will becomes better. Again, they comes in the OPD with these problems. Yes, pap smear should be done. The most common alarming symptom is postcoital bleeding. Just after the sex, if the patient presents with the spotting or bleeding, they may have some problem in the cervix. If there is non-healing or recurrent cervical erosions, again you have to be very much aware that yes, this patient may have the cervical abnormalities and do the pap smear. Irregular or intermenstrual bleeding, especially in perimenopausal phase, it is one of the important indication to do the pap smear. So these are all the indication, but yes, even if the patient doesn't present with any symptoms, you should counsel that this is a screening test. The patient may be asymptomatic, and this screening test is very useful to detect the early lesion, and we can manage them very nicely. And the cure rate is 100%. What are the other things patient may present with? The chronic pelvic pain? You don't know. You are treating with the antibiotics, anti-inflammatory, but patient heaviness in the pelvis. Patient is complaining or irregular bowel movements, distension, loss of weight. There may be heavy bleeding, prolonged bleeding during the perimenopausal phase or postmenopausal bleeding. Cervical polyp may present as cancer and any tumor during or after menopause. So is it possible to get protection against cervical cancer? Because whenever we think about cancer, we always think that yes, it is not treatable. But this is the only cancer. If you find it at a very earlier stage, then we can prevent it. So why the screening is there for cervical cancer? Because there are many cancers, but this is the only cancer where the screening strategies can be applied. Like early vaccination can prevent. We know that the HIV is the major cause, so start with the primary prevention, and the secondary prevention is diagnosing the disease at a very pre-invasive stage. So because we all know that whenever a patient has CIN1 or CIN2, they take at least 20 to 25 years to have a full-blown cancer. So we have this long period of time and then we can pick up this disease. Okay, and their population affected is very high in number. So these screening studies can helpful. Second is they have a very high sensitivity and specificity, and this helps the patient to get treated because if it is positive, yes, these patients may have the problem, and if you treat it, the patient get rid of that problem. And the last not the least is the area where you're doing the examination. This is easily approachable. It doesn't need some sedation or under GA. Just a local examination with proper counseling and taking some samples within a fraction of a second. So you can easily assess the area of the transformation zone. So very easy method. So that's why screening for cervical cancer is very much effective. And Thus, all the screening programs have been developed because they catch the patient in early stage and it helps in the saving of their lives. So you all know that morbidity and the mortality due to cervical cancer is much high. So you need to do the screening test and do the public awareness program by your counseling and all the screening tests, and then you can help these patients from this morbidity and mortality. So now coming to the different screening test. I will not go into every screening test. Will be discussing about the pap smear only, but everything will be discussed to you. That is, one is visual inspection with acetic acid. That is when you do the examination of the cervix by Cusco's speculum. Have you seen the Cusco's speculum? If you have not seen, you will be seeing in the OPD. We most commonly use the Cusco's speculum. This is bivalve speculum, and which is inserted in the vagina, and the blades are open, and with the screw it is fixed. So the assistant is not required in that, and then you can nicely see the external loss and the area of the transformation zone. Any growth, any vascularity, any other lesions you can see by your naked eyes and do the proper investigations. Next is visual inspection with acetic acid. Yes, the acetic acid, we all know that it causes coagulation of the proteins. So those cells which are highly proliferating, they are causing coagulation of this because of the high DNA. So denaturation and coagulation of the protein causes the thickening and dense white astro white appearance of that zone, and this is a very good sign that there may be some lesion. Okay, highly proliferating area is there, and you can take the biopsy. That is visual inspection with the acetic acid. Then again, that is visual inspection with levosiodine. We all know that iodine, when you apply iodine, it causes, because iodine has a tendency to take the glucose. Okay, so change the glucose, and when the glucose area is there, glycogen containing epithelium is there, so it becomes mahogany brown. So if it mahogany brown is not there, then the chances of suspicious lesion is much high. The pap smear is there, which we are discussing. The pap smear is two types, that is conventional, which we mostly do in our OPD settings, and one is liquid based cytology. That is the more advanced sense where we can do both the pap smear automated settings with a good setup, and again in this liquid based cytology we can do the HPV DNA along with that. So it has a double advantages. We can do the cytology and the DNA test with the liquid based cytology. So coming to the guidelines, when to start the pap smear, when to do the screening, how long to do the screening, and at what interval. So there are many recommendations are there, and the American classification or cervical cancer screening programs, they have given the classifications. So you should need to know that when to start the pap smear. So always above 21 years of age. Okay. So but women should not be screened regardless of the age of sexual initiation or other risk factors. You should need to know. Okay. Again, between 21 to 29 years of age, yes, screening should be recommended, and with the cytology every 3 years. If you do the conventional pap smear screening, yes, start with the 21 years, and every 3 years you have to repeat. If it is negative, but if it is positive, then you have to do the proper treatment. But if it is negative, then you have to repeat every 3 years. And between 30 to 65 years, screening with the cytology, because HPV testing, we know that it is a very specific test, and diagnose almost 90 to 95% of the cervical abnormalities, but again it is very costly. So in our developing countries we cannot do it, but where it is available, you can go with the screening with the cytology with the HPV testing. And if you are using HPV testing, then you can repeat every 5 years, not 3 years. But if you are using cytology, yes, every 3 years you have to do. Again, if the woman is older than 65 years, if there is a previous history of any positivity in the cervical cancer or any treatment, there is the recommendation that yes, you have to continue beyond that. But if the patient doesn't have any history, then you can stop it. There is no recommendation to continue after the age of 65 years. If the patient has got hysterectomy, so what to do? Whether to do the pap smear or not? The answer is that what is the histopathology of the specimen. So if the cervix it comes out to be CIN2 or CIN3 or high grade lesion, then again you have to do the walt smear in these patients. Okay, till the age of 75 years. But in hysterectomy specimen, if there is a grossly normal cervix, any no abnormality present, then you can stop the smear or cytology screening. Again, if the patient is vaccinated, the patient will say, now I am vaccinated. What is the use to be screened? No, always you have to screen the patient, even if the patient is vaccinated, because we know that the vaccination provides immunity to some of the strains of the virus. As you can see, the coronavirus, we have taken the vaccination, but now we again becomes infected. So why? Because there are multiple strains. So again, that is likely with that of the HPV infection. Only two or three strains we be giving the vaccine for that, but the patient may be infected for the other strains. So again, the cytology is recommended even the patient is HPV vaccinated. I hope these important things are clear. Now, coming to the pap smear. What is it? The pap smear is basically the sampling of the cervix. What do you do that? You have to scrape the cervical surface very gently, not very hard, but because if you do it very hard with the pressure, there will be bleeding and you will not get anything. So gentle scraping of the cervix, which is visualized properly, that is the area of the transformation zone. Then this is a proper pap smear. Again, I have told you that transformation zone may not be visible 100% nicely in the patient with the perimenopause or postmenopause because it will get inside the endocervix. So in that case, you have to take the two method. First is the by the brush. Okay, that is cyto brush technique, which is inside and the outer area, which you can see by your naked eye with the scrapings. So in these patients, two smear you need to do. But in reproductive age group, yes, only a single smear is enough because you can see the transformation so nicely. Now you can see picture over here that this is the transformation zone, this is the external os, okay, and the cells which are there, they are scraped from the cervix and examined under the microscope to check the disease or the problems. Why pap smear is very much important? Because it is easy, painless, reliable method in which the discharge from the vagina is taken on the slide and it is sent for the examination for the presence of abnormal cells. And the routine pap smear has reduced the cancer cervix by 75% in the developed world. Okay, and repeat pap smear is advised if it shows abnormal cells and then advise colposcopy and biopsy. This is more advanced technique. We are doing it. It is available. So what is the significance of pap smear? Please write it down if possible. It detects the precancerous and invasive cancer cervix cases in early stage. Very much important. If the patient becomes positive on a screening, they can be selected for the selective test and management. And with treatment, the progression of the disease is interrupted. We can prevent the further progression. Thus, the morbidity associated with the advanced disease decrease and the mortality is reduced to 20 to 60%, which is a big number. And it helps to study the natural history of the disease. Now, as I have already discussed the transformation zone, the cervix has been developed from the two embryonic sites, the endocervix and the ectocervix. Okay, so the endocervix from the Mullerian plate, which is lined by the columnar epithelium, and the ectocervix, which is lined by the stratified squamous epithelium and developed from the urogenital plate. And where these two meets, this is known as the original squamocolumnar junctions, as we can see in the diagram. So under the influence of the hormones, mostly estrogen, this squamous columnar junction moves either outside or inside. Okay, and then there is an exposure of this delicate columnar cells when it is exposed outside to the vaginal environment, which leads to a squamous metaplasia. Okay, so transformation zone may be area of squamous metaplasia or area between the original and the new squamous junction. Now you can see nicely. So this ectocervix, the metaplasia and the endocervix. And this is the dotted line. This is the dotted line which is the old squamocolumnar junction. Okay. And this line, light dotted line, it is the new squamocolumnar junction. Okay. And this area is the transformation zone between the old and the new squamocolumnar junction. And this is the external os. Okay. Here is the ectocervix. This is a metaplasia, which is because this is a transformation zone, so metaplasia will occur, and this is the endocervix. Okay, that is lined by the columnar epithelium. So where you can well appreciate this transformation zone. This is a area. This is not a line. So exposure of the transformation zone to the carcinogens, it begins the process of intraepithelial neoplasia. While the exact role of carcinogens in this process remains poorly understood, it is clear that HPV infection and cigarette smoking can cause dysplasia at the transformation zone. And 95% of the cervical cancer develop in the transformation zone. So that's why we are taking the sample from the transformation zone. So the cells are taken from the cervix by the use of the speculum. I have told you the speculum which is known as Cusco's double valved self-retaining vaginal speculum, and then you use a spatula. The spatula, the name is the Ayer spatula. With this Ayer spatula, we take the cells that is collected around the transformation zone by the scraping, and then we smear it in a on a glass slide, and then it is fixed, and that is observed under microscopic examination. Now you can see that the external os is exposed nicely. Okay, and this wooden area is known as spatula. Now in the second picture you can see the spatula. This is the wooden spatula, and these are the two curvatures. Okay, so one usually what is there, one curvature is more longer and one is very short. So that longer one should be inside the cervix. When you rotate it around the transformation zone, the longer one should be inside the cervix and the shorter one should be outside. Okay, you should not use too much of force, and you rotate it 360-degree, maintaining the contact with the ectocervix. That is most important. Only one complete rotation is important. You should not go with 2 or 3 rotation. Okay, then sample is smeared evenly on the glass slide. Just evenly you should spread it on the glass slides, and both the side of the spatula should be smeared, not the single, because they will both the sides will have the cells on it. Then you can see the next is, this is a plastic small cannula, and there it is ending up with a brush. Okay, so this is known as cyto brush. So in those patients where you cannot see the transformation zone 100% because it is inside, then you have to take that cyto brush and take it inside, rotate it inside the endocervix, and then smear that cells from the cyto brush on the slide. So this is very much important. Here you rotate 180-degree, and then it will fix the smear with the help of 95% alcohol. Okay, and then leave the slide for complete air drying. Okay, because that will be moist. You cannot wrap it. Okay, so just leave it for 5 minutes for complete air drying. And that is a most important thing is that where to spray and how to spray. So the spray should be, when you take the slides, and the spray should be at least 10 inches from that slide. Not too much close, not too much away. Because when you are too much close, there will be splitting of the cells and you will not have a good smear. You should at least have 10 inches. Okay, and then the spray smear should be monolayer for proper penetration of the surface by fixative. So your smear should not be very much thick. It should be thinly prepared. Otherwise the fixation will not be achieved. Again, the liquid based cytology, what is it? We have known that it is a more advanced technique. It is like a pap smear. We can prepare several slides from one smear, and we can do the testing of HPV DNA also. Okay, So it reduces the incidence of the inadequate and repeat smear, because we all know that when you are taking the pap smear, what you are taking whole of the mucus, the cells, and the blood stain cells and other debris, okay, that is on the smear. So the smear is not properly fixed because of that. And when you are transferring these slides to the pathology department, they are not able to read it nicely, okay, because of the improper smear. So these are the disadvantage of the pap smear, so which can be overcome by the liquid based cytology, because they have the system where they filter only those cells of the cervix, and rest of the debris will be separated, and only that cells will be taken out and a proper smear will be prepared. So only these cells is there, and you will not be able to see any other debris or blood cells or mucus, anything else. So it will not interfere with your reading. So this will have high sensitivity and specificity. Now again, this is a picture of the transformation. You can very well appreciate the inner borders and the external borders. Okay, the inside is the new scomocolumnar junction, and the outside is the original scomocolumnar junction. And this whole area you can see nicely, and this is known as transformation zone, which is the area of the metaplastic squamous epithelium. So we all know that this is a method of secondary prevention. Okay. So pap smear, one important thing I want to discuss is that whenever you are taking the pap smear, always tell the patient that the patient should not doubt, or the patient should not use any cream, vaginal cream or antibiotic. Patient should not do any sexual intercourse 2 or 3 days prior. The patient should not have any bleeding or irregular spotting. So in these cases, we cannot do the pap smear. Okay. If the patient has a very foul smelling discharge or candidal discharge, again you cannot take the pap smear, because what you will get, severe degree of inflammation or candidal infection, because the cells, infected cells will be there, and you will not take out the cervical cells. So once the patient will be treated with this abnormalities, the infection, after 2 weeks you call the patient again, and then if the cervix is grossly normal looking, then you can take the pap smear. So in these cases, you have to counsel the patient that yes, whatever the problem is, and why you are not taking the pap smear, and when you have to repeat the pap smear, and the pap smear is coming with this reporting. So what are the Bethesda system of reporting? You will be studying in the theoretical class, that low grade intraepithelial neoplasia, high grade intraepithelial neoplasia, and the invasive cancer. So depending upon this, we are treating the patients and the age of the patients. So it's very much important to counsel the patient, and the patient should be in lithotomy position, bladder should be empty, proper exposure, and the leg should be flexed at the hip and the knee joint, and you have to clean with the mucus. So when you're taking the pap smear, you should not do the dressing and wrapping with the Savlon or Betadine, and no chemicals should be used. Okay, you do the normal saline dressing and dripping, and when you are inserting the speculum, so patient will have pain. So usually what we do, we used to insert the lignocaine jelly, okay, so that the patient will not have pain. But no, if you are going to take the pap smear, never use lignocaine jelly or any other antiseptics. What you do is counsel the patient, and then over the speculum, just pour some normal saline in it, it's become moist, there's some lubrication, and then we insert nicely and then rotate it. So this is very much important. No antiseptic, no antibiotics, you should not be smeared before you are taking the pap smear. Okay, and then you have to keep it well dry, wrap it, patient MRD number, name, age, sex, and then you have to refer to the pathologist. So the most important is the primary prevention, that is preventing the modifiable risk factors. Some of the risk factors can be modified, and some of the risk factors are not modified, like the genetic. Genetic part may be there, familial part may be there for CS cervix. Yes, it is rare, but it cannot be modified. But some of the things which can be part, like avoiding early marriages, the multiparity, avoid multiple partners, use of contraceptive to avoid STD and HPV diseases, improve the nutrition and the personal hygiene of the patient, prevention of the smoking, alcoholism, regular exercise, health awareness, and regular visits and health checkup. This is very much important as I got a very long way to manage this. Okay, so to produce a cancer-free society, screening and identification of the high-risk groups is very much important. The education about the cervical cancer and its prevention in the early stage is very much important. The behavioral changes, what is the most important, that counseling, that the multiple partners should be reduced, the patient should be in monogamous relationship, delay with the sexual intercourse. Adolescent counseling here is very much important because most of the adolescents now is coming with the STD infections, and these is very much high risk factors in these patients in the long run, because the trauma to the cervix starts very early. STD infection, you have to avoid use of condoms or spermicides. Smoking should be avoided, and yes, HPV vaccines should be taken. And it's got a very good rule if the patient is taking either 2 doses or 3 doses, depending upon the age. Okay, we all know about the HPV vaccine, and it will be taken in the other classes. So let's fight against cancer. We should join our hands to take the preventive measures. We should update ourselves and take care of these patients. So thank you very much. Any questions you can ask, any confusion? You can
Good
write in.
afternoon, ma'am.
Yeah, good afternoon, Siddharth.
Ma'am, how do we do liquid-based cytology?
Okay, I have told that liquid based cytology, basically it is a advanced method, okay, of doing the cervical cancer screening, because it is costly also. Okay, so what we do in the liquid based cytology, basically they are giving some media. Okay, so in that media, what we do is there's a brush also. Okay, this brush, we use that brush, and then what we use is, when you rotate this brush at the external loss, as we do in the pap smear, so what is happening, that this, the all these cells get dislodged nicely in the culture media. Okay, they are providing. Okay, basically this is a fixation media also, that is 95% alcohol. Okay, this is a very good method, and then it is taken to the lab, and this lab, they are running the liquid based sample, you know, uh, in a chamber. Okay, so that is a density gradient technique. Okay, in that they are, they can segregate the cells of the cervix from the debris like the blood cells or some mucus or any other bacteria, so can collect only the cervical cells, and then they take the cells again, and on a pap smear, on a slide, they make a smear, and then under the microscope, the automated microscope, okay, that is not the conventional, so the automated microscope, they are seeing that. So this is how they can do. Again, with the help of this, they can also take the DNA for the human papilloma virus, like we go mostly known as, that is uh, 16, 18, which is the high risk group, or there may be low risk group like 6 and 10. So this is the method. We can go to the YouTube and you can take it. So basically, the cost is very high and the patient cannot afford this. That's why we are using the conventional techniques, because in BHU, there's still, we don't have the liquid based cytology, because if it is there, the sensitivity and the specificity of this pap smear becomes very much high, the conventional pap smear, because of the excellent preservation of the nuclear details and better fixation. Okay, so atypical cells, they are very much nicely collected. Okay, and the other cells can be spared. We cannot differentiate in the pap smear conventional spectrum of the normal cells and the abnormal cells. Okay, but in case of liquid based cytology, yes, the sensitivity and specificity of collection is improved. Okay, But yes, the problem we know that this is the basic thing. But yes, if you need to know, go to the Google and here you could put the video. You can see that properly. Okay, then you will understand it nicely.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
ma'am, please repeat that point that what you said about the ASCP guidelines of 30 to 65 years old and what we do after hysterectomy.
Okay. In 30 to 65 years old, we have to repeat if we are using the conventional pap smear. Okay. So if you are using the conventional pap smear, you have to repeat this every 3 years. Okay. But if you are using the liquid based cytology, where you can use the both the pap smear and HPV DNA testing, which has got a high specificity, because we can directly know that yes, this patient has HPV 16 or 18 infection. So this is very specific. So in that cases, if the patient becomes negative with the liquid based cytology, okay, then you can repeat every 5 years. The duration of repeat smear is prolonged, but if you are using conventional, it is 3 years. So this will continue from 30 years to 65 years. Okay, you cannot stop this. But if the patient is hysterectomized, okay, then what to do? Whether to go for the pap smear or not? Only in those cases, in the hysterectomy specimen, if the histopathology comes out to be a CIN1 or CIN2 or high grade neoplasia, then you have to continue till 75 years of age, or that the patient is still the patient is alive. Okay. But in the hysterectomy specimen, if the cervix is grossly normal, most of that comes as a cervicitis. Okay. So in that case, you need not to again do the repeat smear even if the patient is 55 years of age, and if the histopathology is normal, you need not to repeat the test. Okay, so this is much more important in the hysterectomy. Otherwise, even if the patient is hysterectomized, you have to continue the pap smear every 3 years if the patient histopathology comes out to be CIN1, CIN2 or invasive cancer. Is it clear?
Yes,
And
ma'am.
it will be done till 75 years of age.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
Ma'am,
Yeah. Chief.
what is the age for taking HPV vaccine?
Acha, that is a big class. The age is the recommendation by WHO is it is from 9 to 15 years of age. Okay. The ideal age of taking the vaccine. If you are taking the most important, the Gardasil vaccine, we are giving it. That is containing of 4 doses. है ना? That is 6, 10, 16, 18. Six, yes, 4 viruses, HPV DNA. So in that case, you can take only 2 vaccine if the patient age is between 9 to 15 years. But if the patient doesn't come below 15 years of age, if the patient is coming at 18 years of age, then you have to give for 3 vaccines. Okay. So the best to take the vaccine before the start of the sexual activity. That is a recommendation, but the ideal is to take the vaccine between 9 to 15 years of age. Okay, that is the HPV vaccine. That is a long class. You will be taken about.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I am leaving the meeting.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.